Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to day 18. This is your Great Minds Teacher lesson, but surprise, it's me, Mrs. Arrett. So let's get started. We have a lot to do today, a lot of very important work, so I want you to be paying close attention. So the most important thing that you'll need is Thunder Rolling in the Mountains today. Between today and tomorrow, you're going to need handout 23A in your workbook. You're going to need handout 23B on Schoology, but you can also look at it in your workbook to help. And then handout 18B, our evidence organizer that we've been using all along this focusing question task arc. You'll need your day 18 GMT and CT in sync journal, so you can have that open because we're going to use that first. And then you're going to need a few colored pencils, red, purple, yellow, and blue. So just make sure that you have those. We may get to it today. If not, then we'll need them for tomorrow anyway. So go ahead and pause the video now and get those materials. Okay, so our essential question is, how do cultural beliefs and values guide people? We're about halfway through this module and we are really starting to answer this question. And also, we've been looking more closely at what important beliefs and values guide Chief Joseph and his daughter, Sound of Running Feet. Okay, so we have been gathering evidence throughout this novel so far to help us answer that question that we will be answering for Focusing Question Task 5. What does a deeper exploration of characters' interactions reveal in the novel? So I think you've already discovered as readers that we can learn a lot about characters just by paying attention to what they're saying and what they're doing. We can also learn about that character by how they interact with other characters. So for instance, we've learned a lot about Sound of Running Feet and Chief Joseph through their interactions, such as how Sound of Running Feet respects her father as a leader and how he confides in her and how many beliefs and values that they actually share and how many that they don't share. So in this lesson, we're going to be studying how Sound of Running Feet interacts with the young white girls from chapters 14 and 15 and what that reveals about both groups. So think about Sound of Running Feet's interactions with white people in the past. So for example, do you remember what she thought about the white settlers that built a cabin on her land way back in chapter 1? Jason Upright and his wife. What have her past experiences been with white people? What were they like? How have those interactions shaped her feelings towards white people in general? I want you to pause the video and answer these questions in your InSync journal. And we're going to think about this question as we revisit a couple of themes in chapters 14 and 15 with Sound of Running Feet and the white women who were captured by the Nez Perce. So go ahead and pause that video and answer that question. Okay, so we're going to have a little discussion about Sound of Running Feet and her interactions with the white girls. But to do this, I really want to see what you can kind of come up with on your own if you are working remotely. So you'll be answering these questions. If you are in class, we will kind of be jotting notes down, but we'll be discussing as a class. So for number 1, reread the passage on pages 71 to 72, beginning with, "We had stopped for food," and ending with, "stared straight ahead and said nothing." So let's go ahead and get that out. "We had stopped for food when there was a great commotion. The scouts came riding in, but they were not alone. White settlers rode with them. 2 of the settlers were women. The one on a gray horse that had seen as many snows as my mother. She had eyes the color of an early morning sky, a narrow nose and a sharp chin. Her hair was the shade of dry grass, which she had twisted on top of her head. She was so strange looking that I felt sorry for her. She wore many long skirts and sat with both legs on the same side of the horse. It seemed a foolish way to ride. The one on the spotted horse was younger, no older than I. She too sat sideways. Her eyes were green like spring grass. Her hair, the red gold of a setting sun, had come loose and hung around her shoulders. Her face was dirty. There were twigs and burrs in her hair and mud on her skirt. I guessed that she had tried to run away. The women seemed frightened, but they stared straight ahead and said nothing. In what ways do the women seem strange to Sound of Running Feet, and in what ways do you imagine she seems strange to them? So go ahead and pause the video and answer that in your InSync journal. Okay, so now that you've answered that in your journal, let's take a look at some responses. So the way they look seems strange to her. She observes that one has yellow hair and blue eyes, the other has red hair and green eyes, and the way the women are riding sideways on their horses seems strange to her, and the way Sound of Running Feet and her people look, dress, and behave probably seems strange to the women. So number 2. Now reread the passage on page 73, beginning, I motioned the settlers to sit down, and ending with, they did not look evil. Think about Sound of Running Feet's past experiences with white people. Why is Sound of Running Feet so curious about these women? Why might she have expected the women to look evil? So on page 73, I motioned to the settlers. I motioned to the settlers to sit down. Yellow hair and dirty face were the first white women I had seen so close. I stared at them. They were not pretty, but they did not look evil. So go ahead and respond to this question in your InSync journal. Pause this video and come back when you're ready. Okay, so now that you've responded to that question, let's look at some possible responses. So she is curious about what white women are like. She has never been face to face with them before. To her, they're strange. And her experiences with white people, including settlers, have all been negative. White settlers like these people are the reason she and her tribe were forced off their homeland. Settlers had fought with the soldiers and killed many of her people. Let's go on to number 3. Now reread the passage on pages 74 to 75, beginning with, that night the settlers slept, and ending with, from women of the Namipu. What do you think puzzled means? I'm sorry, that should say means in this context. Use the outside in strategy to help you figure out what that means. Okay, so we haven't actually used the outside in strategy, so all I want you to do is tell me what you think puzzled means in this context. So it begins with that night the settlers until maybe. That night the settlers slept in front of the fire, next to our shelter. I gave them buffalo robes against the cold. Dirty Face pulled her robe around her and began to cry. Yellow Hair spoke softly to her. She put her arm around the girl's shoulder and comforted her, as a mother would comfort a hurt child. It puzzled me to see that white women acted no different from women of the Namipu. So go ahead and tell me what you think puzzled means in this context. Then come back when you're ready. So I think it means confused. So I know that a puzzle or a toy or a problem that can be confusing and requires, puzzle, toy, requires figuring out. She doesn't seem to understand why the white women are acting like Namipu women. Oh, so I know that a puzzle is a toy or a problem that can be confusing. Sorry, a lot of typos. Okay, so let's go on to number 4. Why do you think the women's behavior puzzles Sound of Running Feet so much? So go ahead, pause the video and respond, and then come back when you're ready. So because they're white, she expects the women to be different and less human than her own people. She is surprised and perplexed when they show human emotions, caring for and comforting each other. That she recognizes in Nez Perce women. Let's go on to number 5. Now reread the passage on pages 76 to 77, beginning with the next day and ending with, I felt good inside. Describe the interaction between Sound of Running Feet and the young girl she calls Dirty Face in the scene. The next day, Yellow Hair and her sister rode beside me on 2 of our ponies. They used our saddles and rode like Namipu, with their legs hanging down on each side of the horse. Their full skirts were hiked up over their knees and showed their high boots with many buttons. A cold wind blew down upon us. Dirty Face's hair whipped around her face, and she kept brushing it out of her eyes. At night she moaned and cried out in her sleep. By day she shrank back in fear, and each time a warrior passed near her. There was nothing for her to fear. We did not harm women. I wanted to tell her so, but I had no words to say to Dirty Face, and she had no words to say to me. She did not understand my hand signs. A thought came into my head. I pulled a hat out of my pony's pack. It was a basket hat. Many of our women wore them. I put the hat on, then took it off and handed it to her, making signs. Dirty Face pulled the hat over her flying hair. She smiled a shy smile. She had no words, but for the rest of that day she looked less like a trapped deer. I felt good inside. So go ahead and respond in your instinct journal to that question, and when you're ready, you can come on back. So in this scene, Sound of Running Feet wants the girl to understand that her people do not hurt women. Because the girl doesn't understand her language, Sound of Running Feet gives her the hat. The girl smiles at Sound of Running Feet. So this is a good interaction. Okay, number 6, how and why do the girls regard each other differently in this scene than they did upon first meeting each other? So why do the Sound of Running Feet feel differently, basically, about these girls? Dirty Face and Yellow Hair, as she calls them. So go ahead and respond in your instinct journal, and when you're ready, you can come on back. So after observing the girls more, Sound of Running Feet understands how scared she is, or the girl, just the one, and wants to offer her some comfort and assurance that she will not be harmed. Before this point, Sound of Running Feet did not know how to communicate with the girl. The girl smiles at Sound of Running Feet, showing she feels less scared of her than she did at first, and she seems to recognize Sound of Running Feet's kindness. Perhaps both girls recognize each other as humans rather than just enemies. So that was great work studying the interactions. Now we're going to move on, now that we've gained a deeper understanding of Sound of Running Feet and her interaction with the white family settlers. Female settlers, you also paid attention to the similarities and differences among the 3 women. So we're going to continue looking at those similarities and differences as we look at our comparison-contrast essay. So today's craft question, experiment. How does a comparison-contrast essay work? So let's review the basic parts of a comparison-contrast essay first. So for this next part of the lesson, we'll need handout 23A. And I'm going to use this handout to show you the parts of an informative, explanatory, painted essay. So go ahead and get your workbook out and follow along with me on there. Since we've been talking a lot about similarities and differences, I bet you're going to notice a lot of similarities and differences between this essay and the parts of a paragraph that you've already learned so much about. So remember, we have written an informative explanatory paragraph. Now we're looking at the essay, and we need to compare our paragraph to our essay. So let's take a look. What are some similarities? What are some things that the essay has that we know there was in our paragraph? Okay, so we had a topic statement, and we have those in each of our supporting paragraphs. But in our introduction, we have a thesis. It's called a thesis. So state your essential idea about a topic, which is pretty much what our topic statement was. And preview your supporting points. So look at that. That's the same. We have 2 points, just like we did in our paragraph. Also, we have evidence and elaboration to support each of those 2 points. So point 1 and point 2. And we have a conclusion. Remember, the conclusion is used to reinforce your thesis and reflect on its significance. What is it? Why is it important? So let's look at some of the differences. So up at the top, the essay introduction has a hook, which is used to catch your audience's attention. So the essay body includes 2 supporting paragraphs, not sentences, but a paragraph that supports each one of the points. So point 1 and point 2. We have supporting paragraph 1 that supports point 1 and supporting paragraph which supports point 2. The essay version also has a concluding paragraph instead of just a concluding statement. So pretty soon you're going to be completing focusing question task 5, which you've been preparing for whether you've noticed or not. We're going to write a specific type of essay called a comparison contrast essay, in which you're going to explain how Sound of Running Feet and Chief Joseph's beliefs and values are similar and different. So let's take a look at handout 23B. So this is pretty interesting. It's going to give you a sense of what a comparison contrast essay looks like. And I'm going to color, we've already colored a few key parts like the painted essay. Okay, so go ahead and take out 23B in your workbook. And this is where I want you to have your colored pencils as well. So this part of a comparison contrast essay about Sound of Running Feet and the white female settlers that we met in chapter 13, or this is part of the comparison contrast essay. So I'm going to read the introduction paragraph and I'd like for you to follow along. Have you ever thought upon first meeting someone that you had nothing in common, only to realize later that you were wrong? That is our hook. Okay, and we'll talk about hook in a little bit. In chapter 13, Nez Perce scouts bring back a group of white settlers, including 2 women. The Nez Perce free the settlers only to recapture them later when they discover them spying. Okay, that's our introduction. We're giving a little bit of context there. Sound of Running Feet, who has never come face to face with the white women, is very curious about these female prisoners. At first, the women seem nothing like her and her people, so that can also fall under the introduction category. You're telling us what's going on before leading into your thesis here, which is the yellow and blue. Sound of Running Feet and the white female settlers come from very different cultures with conflicting beliefs and values. However, she later realizes they also share much in common as women. So we have our point 1 is in yellow and point 2 is in blue. So I want you to go ahead and color this. You can also color these couple of sentences here. These 2 sentences here in purple. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video to do so now. Okay, so do you remember what the job of an introduction paragraph is? It's to catch the reader's attention and give some background information or context so the reader can understand what's happening. So we've done that here with our hook by asking a question, and we've done that here with our context in the purple. Okay, so our hook is a question in the first line. Not all hooks are questions, but a question is an interesting way to grab your reader's attention because your reader has already started thinking about the answer, and it makes the reader want to continue to read. So, by the way, how does this particular hook set the reader up to start thinking about comparing and contrasting? So now think about which sentences provide background information for the reader. So in chapter 13, all the way down to "and her people." That sets the reader up with context, telling us what's happening. And we've done a lot of that work on our evidence organizer with our evidence. So the introduction paragraph contains the thesis statement. So do you remember the job of a thesis statement? Okay, thumbs up if you thought it was to state the essential idea, including your 2 points. So how would you describe the job of a thesis in a comparison-contrast essay? I want you to think about how it would be similar to and different from a traditional painted essay. So just like a traditional painted essay, it states the essential idea about a topic, and it previews the 2 supporting points. And the thesis in a comparison-contrast essay identifies the subjects that are being compared and contrasted, and it states how they are different and alike. So in this case, the first point tells one important difference, and the second point tells an important similarity. So let's make sure we have a sense of what we're going to be comparing and contrasting. So as you probably noticed, this essay is incomplete. Each supporting paragraph does have a topic statement. Okay, that's what I've highlighted here in yellow. And in this case, the topic statement is about the differences, and also has a concluding statement, which you can't see on my page right now, but it's right here. But they're missing some key pieces. So think about it for a minute. What is missing? There are some hints on the page, but I know you already figured it out. They're missing important evidence and elaboration. So now we're going to work on completing each paragraph. This is where you will need your Schoology assignment for handout 23B. Just kind of keep that open in the background, and we're going to be coming back and forth between this video and that page. So we're going to read the topic statement and the concluding statement together. And I've already done you the favor of putting the sentences on this screen that are going to go in the supporting paragraph number 1. You just have to decide which space they go to. So, many settlers believed that it was their right as Americans to settle the West, even though Native American tribes had been living there for generations. Many in her tribe would rather die fighting for their homeland than leave it to the white settlers. At the time, white settlers had begun flocking west in search of opportunity, gold, and what they considered free land. Unlike the white settlers, Sound of Running Feet's entire culture, belief system, and way of life is rooted in their homeland. And but to Sound of Running Feet and her people, the land means so much more than a piece of property. So these 5 sentences are going to fit in the evidence of difference, so white settlers including women, and the elaboration for that. And the evidence of difference, the Nez Perce and Sound of Running Feet, and elaboration. Okay, so your job, and we're going to read the concluding statement about difference first, is to put these 5 sentences in this topic statement about difference. So when you go onto Schoology, you're going to see a really long page, and then at the bottom you're going to have choices that you can click and drag and drop. Take note that you're not putting them all in the first paragraph, supporting paragraph 1. You're just using these 5. So I've already given you a hint because there's a bunch of them there. So let's read the concluding statement first, and you can pause the video and fill that out. So because of their cultural differences and all of the losses her people have suffered as a result of white Americans moving into the West, Sound of Running Feet is prepared to see the white women as evil. So you can go ahead and use these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options here, and some of them may be combined, so pay attention on the Schoology page to click and drag them into these 4 boxes for the supporting paragraph 1. Okay, and then when you're done, you can come back and we'll move on to supporting paragraph 2. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing for supporting paragraph 2, but here are our single options. Remember, some of them might be combined, so pay close attention. Read through all of them. Despite their cultural differences, Sound of Running Feet notices that the white women, like women in her own culture, care for each other and for their children. So we have the evidence of similarity. So you're going to talk about the white women for the evidence and elaboration, and then evidence of similarity. So the Nez Perce women and Sound of Running Feet in these 2 boxes. Okay, so I have given you the options for what goes in supporting paragraph 2. Remember, some of them may be combined too, so make sure you read them carefully. So you can go ahead and pause the video, and then we're going to go on and read the concluding paragraph. Okay, so now that you have supporting paragraph 1 and supporting paragraph 2 totally filled out on your handout 23B on Schoology, you can press submit. And we are going to go ahead and read our conclusion here. So even though cultural differences separate Sound of Running Feet from the white women, they share an important common experience. They're all women, but they are also all human. Being human means caring for and looking after one another, just as Sound of Running Feet does when she gives the white girl her hat in chapter 14. The girl smiles back at Sound of Running Feet as if to give thanks and to recognize her as a fellow woman and human being. Okay, so boys and girls, that is it for today. You just need to make sure that you have completed handout 23B and that you've answered everything but the last check for understanding in your in-sync journal. So don't submit your in-sync journal. You'll submit it tomorrow after we complete the next part of the lesson. But great job today.